For this episode of Coffee with Closers, I'm sitting down with Derek Volk. Derek is the president and CEO of Volk Packaging. He has an Amazon best-selling book called Chasing the Rabbit, a dad's life raising a son on the spectrum. During our conversation, Derek shared some practical wisdom on acquiring and growing a third-generation family business, as well as best practices for balancing life, family, and business priorities. Stay tuned for my conversation with Derek.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Closers, where business leaders share insights on how to build businesses from the ground up and best practices for innovating in their industry.
Hey, Derek, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Most certainly. Well, every entrepreneur has a story of how they overcame obstacles to become an entrepreneur, and I'm sure you have some very similar story. But in your case, you actually acquired a business that was built by your family. You want to tell us a little bit about your journey of becoming an entrepreneur? And
yeah, sure. So the company was started in 1967 by my father and grandfather. And in 1974, my uncle joined the business. In 1986, my grandfather retired. 2007, my father retired officially. He'd been in Florida for several years at that point. And then in 2019, my uncle retired. So with each one of those retirements, things changed. And I'm the only one. I don't have any siblings or cousins that wanted to join the business. So it's just myself and now my wife. So we're still a family business, just husband and wife instead of uncle and nephew.
Yeah,
and
I think,
and so it's gone well. It's gone as smooth as I think these things can go. They're always tricky.
Yeah, and I think there, especially with a family business, there's a lot of dynamics, and I'm seeing commonly, especially in the manufacturing sector, second and third generation is usually taking over the business, and occasionally the second or third generation may not even want to be in the same business their fathers and grandfathers started. But I'm happy to see that you've kind of took the legacy and building upon that. What has it been like, that transition of ownership from your parent, obviously from your dad and grandfather to you? How has that affected the overall company and culture?
Yeah, well, I started I worked here in high school and college, vacations, and out in the plant, as did my wife, because we were dating at the time. And then I went on the road. So I worked all kinds of different jobs here in the building, so I could kind of learn a little bit about everything. And then I went on the road and was a sales rep for 4.5 years. After that, I became sales manager, and then eventually vice president. And then when my father retired, I became president. And now I'm president, CEO, and chief dishwasher, I guess. And it's gone fine. My father had kind of checked out for the most part several years before his official retirement. Still kind of staying involved, but not on a day-to-day basis. My uncle was in kind of the same boat. He had other things going on. He's written a couple books, so he's spending a lot of time on that. And he kind of let me run the show for the last, I don't know how many years. Because it didn't really just like happen on a day where he said, okay, now you're taking over. But slowly he stopped coming to meetings, and I would tell him about decisions, and he would just say, okay, without any question. He just kind of let me do what I do. And it's been great. We have last year was our 12th straight year of growth, despite COVID, and despite the fact that we were struggling for last April and May. Last time this year, I never in a million years would have told you that we would have had a good year last year. Mm-hmm. But by the time the year was over, we got caught up from the horrible April and May, and I kept saying to my sales reps, just $1. That's all I want. I want $1 ahead of last year so that we can keep our streak going. And we were well over that. So they did a great job. The whole team, the entire company did a great job. From there, we head into 2021. with some pretty big expectations. I've pushed my team here to get what it would amount to about 24% growth this year. I don't know if we can pull that off, but that's what I'm going for. And
Yeah,
we're on a good track right now.
Yeah, obviously with everybody staying home and making a lot more online purchases, we need a lot of corrugated boxes. So you're in good company.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
So essentially, you've a business that started in 1960 had to have gone through a lot of iterations and improvements and optimization. And especially as a younger person coming into the picture, taking ownership of that, you must have had done some improvements of your own. What were some of the major changes that you had to implement, whether it be technology, process improvements, or even overall personnel changes? What were some of the things that you had to do to take the company to the next level?
Well, going back, the first thing I did is I took over the sales department. Within probably 2 years, I had fired half, maybe a little more than half of the sales department, and brought in my own team that I felt had a better handle on the future and where we were going. So that was the first big thing I did, is sales reps started dropping off. After that, business just kind of went along. We grew. We moved into a new building in 1998, which was a big decision. We went from a 65,000 square foot building to a 141,000 square foot building. I remember the first day I walked in and I looked at nothing but cement and beams, and I thought, oh my God, what have we done? What have we done here? We've built something way too big. And as of just this week, I secured 85,000 square feet a couple towns over because we have no more room here. So, and that's a big space. I thought the same thing when I went to that space. Oh my goodness, look how big this is. But I have no doubt that we'll be filling it probably sooner rather than later. And after that, I just kind of kept the corporate culture going. We've always, my father, my grandfather, my uncle, our corporate culture was very important to us, how we treat our employees, things we do here for fun. I ratcheted it up a notch with things like the corrugated Olympics. I also brought technology to the company. I first went in 1996, and I had put together this whole package to get a website and email, and I was very excited about it. I was 26 years old, so I bring this thing into my father, and I'd got quotes. I designed the whole website myself. And I handed him the packet, and I said, "This is for us to get on the internet. I think we need to be on the World Wide Web and have some emails." And my father took it. We still laugh about this. He took it. He's got his glasses, and he goes, "The internet? Isn't that for shut-ins?" And I said, "No, it's not just for shut-ins." I said, "People are using it to do business." And he was not really believing that, but he let me do it anyway. He always gave me a nice leash to try things and the opportunity to fail. In that case, we didn't. We were one of the first box companies in the area with a website, and then after that, I just started slowly taking on more and more bigger roles here at the company. And by 2019, I felt like I was pretty much running the company myself for the last couple of years. And so I made an offer to my uncle, and he took it and retired. And shortly after that, starting about that time, and then for the next year, for all of pretty much 2019, I spent traveling around the country looking for machinery, because I felt if we're really going to take this thing to the next phase and become the size company and the professional company, and even be able to compete with our competitors who have this kind of equipment, we need to upgrade our equipment. We have machines out there that we're running, and all the people running the machine were not born when we put the machine here. So that gives you an idea how old some of our machinery was. So I went out and I spent quite a bit of money buying a new machine that runs so fast that we couldn't put it on our main line. We had to create a whole new line for it, which means I had to buy all new conveyors, all new strappers, new unitizers, and I know most people don't know what those things are, but they're all a lot of money. And had to dig up the floor, make sure the floor was strong enough. We had to put a scrap system in. It was a big, big project, biggest project we've ever done. And then as soon as that got in and started running, I bought another big piece of machinery. So that machine will be here sometime in the fall. After that, I think we'll be good for a while. I have more than enough debt to hold me for a while. And I don't think the bank would let me buy a pack of gum right now if I asked them. So once I get this new machine, this new die cutter that's actually 6 colors, so it prints 4 colors on one side and then it'll print 2 colors on the inside. And that's, going back to your original comment about the internet and people buying online, that was becoming a big issue before COVID. Now it's even bigger. People open the box and they want to see something printed on the inside of the box, and they want an experience that, because they're not going to a store anymore. So I bought a machine that could print on the inside, and very excited to get it. Our customers are very excited to get it. We already have a pile of business lined up for it. It's people ready to go as soon as we have it. We just got to get it here.
Yeah, I mean, the box. Yeah, and especially with, like you said, like the subscription box market is extremely fast growing, and then that is essentially where those sort of custom boxes are important. But going back to what you said, essentially about when you came into the picture, you had to literally fire half the organization in the sales side, which I'm assuming from what my conversations with other business leaders, especially in the manufacturing or especially running any older organization, they have a lot of sales people in the sales role who are just order takers, not revenue drivers, right? And I'm assuming the reason why most of those people never survived when you took the leadership is probably because they were just nothing but order takers. Is that a good assumption?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they just weren't they weren't who I felt best represented the company. One guy actually fired because he was so boring. Like, he was literally the most boring human being I've ever known in my life. I don't know how he sold anything, frankly. I would go out and spend the day with him, and by noon I wanted to stick a fork in my eyeball. He never smiled, even with the customers. He never smiled, never had much to say. I really don't know how he ended up in sales, and I'm really not sure why we hired him, but he was the first. He was the first to go. Then I let another guy go, and he threw his computer at me. He literally threw his CPU at me. He was so mad. So, but it was something I felt I had to do, and then the rest of the team here has just been incredible. I have the best team around. I put my team of people up against just about anybody. Buying all this new equipment, without them, I don't know how I would have done it. People often ask me about how we've had such great success, and because we've more than tripled since I took over the sales department. And I said, the best thing about this is that I'm never the smartest person in the room. When I'm the smartest person in the room, I need to go look around and hire some more people. I have some really, really terrific people that work with me, and I couldn't do any of this without them.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important point that you made, because especially as entrepreneurs, we need to be surrounding ourselves with other business owners that are smarter than us, that can provide advice. And also the same thing is true of the organizational team as well, because if you're always the one that's calling the shot, providing ideas, solving problems, then they're just waiting on you for solving something, right? And you can't trust them to take the lead on certain things, so you can move on to the bigger ideas or bigger challenges. But also the interesting that you mentioned about how you started the website, and which is also something I've heard most of the manufacturing clients that we have as our clients, and also the ones that I ever interviewed, they often say, we built our business on a Rolodex, but then the problem is that Rolodex is getting smaller and smaller, because the other side of that Rolodex is people who are retired. So I think 1996, starting a website was probably, pretty a big leap of faith of what the future is. But essentially, that's what it takes. It doesn't matter whether your business is in the manufacturing sector or you're in the cutting edge of technology. The buying process have completely evolved, right? And then going back to your original assumption of the people that were in the role, they were order takers, and that has also changed as well, because now you need to be much more, sales and basically enabling your buyers to make the right decisions, not just like, oh, which SKU do you want, and how many units do you want, and take the order, process it. That's not what
absolutely.
you want anymore.
Yeah. We're not selling things out of a catalog. It's almost every box we do is custom made. Last year we sold 46 million boxes. So we need packaging specialists, we need innovators, we need people that can, and this is a funny cliche, but we need people that can think outside the box and look at not what is, but what could be. And that's how we separate ourselves from our competition. That and our service is second to none. We will do anything it takes. My grandfather's famous line was, "Our customers are our bread and butter." Mm-hmm. And we live that every day. We have literally every day there are emergencies, add-ons. We have to pull something off a truck to stick something else on, and we do it. We just do it. We get it done. Weekends, nights. We had a customer call us on a Sunday morning of I think it was Labor Day weekend or Memorial weekend, I can't remember, and they screwed up and they needed boxes, and they run 24 hours a day, and they needed them that day. It was a holiday weekend. That was a 5 a.m. phone call. By 7 a.m. I had a crew here, and at 1 o'clock the truck driver called me and said he was leaving their plant, which is 2 hours away. That's the kind of thing we do here.
Yeah, and obviously, you've probably learned a lot of lessons. Obviously, just being able to be with your family, building the company, and all of that. What is the biggest lesson you learned in the process of building the company?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough question because I learn every day. Every day I learn something. There's always something new to learn. One of the best things I ever did was in 2007. I joined a CEO group. Mm-hmm. So it's all box owners.
Is that Vistage or?
Yeah, I'm in a Vistage group locally. Mm-hmm. I'm in a local Vistage group, which is good, but not nearly as good as the other CEO group I'm in, which is all box owners. And because our business is very regional, like we're in Maine, we sell to New England. We barely go into Connecticut. We don't go to all of Vermont. So our business is very regional. The guy in Kalamazoo, Michigan, his business is regional. Fort Worth, Texas, his business is regional. So we can all get together without any issues of collusion or price fixing or anything like that. And we can just completely share our numbers, what we're paying people, what problems we're running into. I get emails from the group all the time. What would you do? This is my situation. What would you do? And boom, he's got 6 or 7 answers right back within an hour. That is one of the best things. If anybody has a group like that in their industry, jump all over it, because what I've learned from, I wouldn't be here in the capacity that I'm in running the company that I'm running without that group. So joining that group was definitely one of the best things that I ever did. And then my father over the years, I don't think it was like one moment, but it was more through watching him, showed me how to treat employees, to go the extra mile. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember we used to go to a bunch of football games all over southern Maine that we didn't know a single kid on the team, but one of our employees' son was playing. And so my father would drag us to the game. Those are the kinds of things that that we still do here, to try to make sure that the people understand that I know that I need them to make boxes, but I also care about them. And we have people that have been here. We have three people that have been here for 40 years. We have several that have been here for over 30. We have people that have been here a long, long time. And so they're more than just employees. They're people that are, I spend more time with them than I do pretty much anybody in my family. So they mean a lot to me, and I wouldn't be here without them, period.
Yeah, that tells a lot about the company culture, because obviously, like you said, right, they're not just a number in the list of employees. It's actually a family, right? They're spending a lot of time in the organization. They also care about the company long enough to stay 30, 40 years with the organization. That tells a lot.
That's one of the things actually that I'm struggling with right now is because we're growing so much, we just started a whole new division to do fulfillment, which means that we'll pack product for people. If they want partitions or foam put in the box, we'll make the boxes, we'll get the foam, we'll put the foam in the box, they'll get it. All they gotta do is open it up, put their product in, and out the door. We also are starting to do things B2C, which we've never done before. So customer sends their products here because they have products that they want to sell, but they don't have the space or the manpower or people, to be more politically correct, to get things out the door. So we can do it for them. So adding a year ago, we had 80 people. Mm-hmm. We're now up to, I think, 114 maybe, and we're still looking to hire. It's really hard to get to know all these people. Plus, we have a bunch of temps out there. So I go out, and there's a lot of faces I don't recognize. In fact, I go out usually once or twice a week. I did it every day during COVID, during the pandemic. But then I started to slow it down. Now I go out once or twice a week, and I get on the PA system right when they're about to leave, and I say, hey, everybody, here's some things going on. I tell them, I squash any rumors, I address any issues, and I tell them about good things we had that happened. We picked up this new piece of business. We lost this piece of business. That's going to hurt us, so we're going to have to replace it. And one of the things that the first thing I said to them just this week, actually, my first thing on my announcements was, I apologize. But the problem is I don't know who I'm apologizing to, because what I'm apologizing for is the fact that I don't know everybody's name anymore. And I'm used to walking through the plant, knowing everybody's name, pretty much knowing what their kids, if not their names, certainly what they like to do, because I'm Facebook friends with all of them. So I see that the kid likes fishing, or he, does races go-karts. So a walk through the plant can take me an hour, because I'm going to ask everybody, how's your son doing with his races? How's your daughter doing with her dance classes? And that's really hard for me, because walking out in the plant and seeing a bunch of people that I don't recognize, that I can't say hi Dave or hi Joe or hi Mary, is a very, very different for me. So I told everybody, look, I'm also 51 years old. I don't remember everything. I got a lot on my mind. So if I meet you and then I walk up to you and reintroduce myself, please don't take it personally. It's just I'm running out of RAM.
Yeah, and that, obviously what you just shared is a great insight for other entrepreneurs too. I think we oftentimes overlook the people behind the scene doing the job that makes what the company is, right? Whether you're selling a product or service, it's the people that behind the scene that actually makes the company run. So really caring about them is an important part.
Yeah, and they have to know that their job is important. If I was just telling them last week in a meeting that we had, because we announced that we were going to 3 shifts. We've been working 10-hour days and a lot of weekends for months and months and months and months, and people are getting burnt out. So we decided to go to a 3rd shift. And when I made that announcement, I told everybody, which is 100% the truth, there's no way we would be growing like this if it wasn't for you. I don't care how good my sales reps are. If customers get crappy product, they're going to go somewhere else. If they don't get their product on time, they're going to go somewhere else. Now, the sales rep and myself, we can work on the pricing. That isn't anything that they can do. But after the price, The price doesn't matter if they get a box that falls apart. And the price doesn't matter if the box comes in a week late and they can't get their product to their customer and they lose business. So at that point, price is irrelevant. Those people out there are just as important. There isn't one person in this building that doesn't have a role that impacts our customers. And unlike our competitors, who are mostly billion-dollar companies, this is it. This is our world headquarters. So if you're working for a company that is a multi-billion-dollar company and you make a mistake, does anybody really care? Like, I mean, is anybody going to notice? I mean, if International Paper is a pretty well-known company, so I'm not saying anything out of school. And they're our biggest competitor because they're also here in Maine. If somebody at International Paper screws up an order, I guarantee you the people at corporate will never even know about it or care about it or anything. If we screw up an order, we could lose the account. And that could have an impact on the company. It could have an impact on their bonus that I want to give them at Christmas time because we screwed up too many accounts. So it's a very different environment than a lot of our competitors. And it's an environment that we thrive on, and it's an environment that helps us continue to be successful.
Yeah, it's a great insight. I think it doesn't matter the size of the organization, but that's the great insight for any entrepreneur. And I know bigger organizations take those things not as serious as someone as our size, right? Because we have much more vested into our organization, and these families, 130 families, are dependent on that income. And if you lose that account, it's going to affect their job. So let's talk a little bit about your personal motivation. Obviously, you have a lot going on. You have a successful business. You have all of those things. What keeps you drive, even in your early 50s, to just keep going at it?
I'm very passionate about the company. The company is started before I was born, so I don't know life without Volk Packaging. I'm very committed to the people here, so I want to make good decisions so that those people's families are protected and they have jobs. I care about our customers. I mean, we have customers that I've known for 30 or 40 years. I can't say that about just about anybody. I mean, I haven't seen most of the friends from high school in that long. And I see these people, and I talk to these customers that have been customers of ours for 30 or 40 years. That's a long relationship. Mm-hmm. So they mean something to me. One of my biggest inspirations, which is kind of a funny one, but it just was one of those things. Sometimes something just sticks. When I was 22 years old, I just started with a company, graduated college, started with a company. I went to play golf with my father, and right before we're, teeing off, we're all just kind of standing around, taking practice swings. A guy walks up that he knows. I don't know who he is. I don't even remember his name. And I think he owned a moving business. And my father said, "This is Derek. He's going to be the third generation of the company." And the guy looked me right in the eye and said, "Oh, so you're the one who's going to run it into the ground?" And I was like, What? He said, "Oh, yeah, it's typical. Rags to riches to rags. The first generation, all the blood, sweat to get it up and going. The next generation gets it up and makes it successful. And the third generation comes in and pisses it all away." And I don't make a big decision without thinking about that comment, because I'll be damned if I'm going to prove that guy right. So there are things like that just stick with you. In 2002, we were really struggling after 9/11, a recession. We just bought a major piece of machinery. We lost some big accounts. We were in rough shape. And our banker came in. We gave him a tour, showed him all the things we were doing. We had literally pulled out now they're all LEDs, but we'd literally pulled out every third light bulb just to save a little bit of money and to show that there's nothing that we're going to do here to not make sure that we get through this. Mm-hmm. So we pulled out light bulbs. I sold my father's beautiful fish tank because the maintenance on it was too expensive. And we brought our banker in, walked him around, showed him everything that we're doing, came back, sat in the conference room, and he looked at us and said, "You guys are never going to make it." And we said, yeah, we're going to be fine. We've been through tough times before. We've been through other recessions. This isn't our first recession. And he said, no, you're not coming out of this. That was a pretty powerful moment. When he left, I remember I turned to my father and uncle. I said, I think we need a new bank. I'm not sensing a lot of confidence with this bank. So we switched banks, and we're with Bangor Savings now here in Maine. They're fantastic, terrific bank to work with. We can talk right to the president of the company, but those kinds of things, I guess, challenge me. Mm-hmm. I guess I like a challenge. So tell me I can't do something, and I'm probably a lot more likely to bust my butt to do it.
Yeah, and I think I like that attitude. I think as entrepreneurs, you do need that. The other side of it is sometimes people just take that beating and then just make that prophecy come to life because they live it out, because they just believe whatever someone else may have spoken over that person. Let's talk a little bit about your personal journey as well, because I know not everything has been easy for you. You've also had a personal story in your own family with a child with autism, and you've written a book with your son about that. Obviously, that also adds to the complexity of running a company. So tell us a little bit about that personal journey and how that actually has given you more drive to succeed and grow.
That journey started in 2013. I had a gentleman actually who is now, he's the leader of the Vistage program that I'm in, which is ironic because I'd never met him at the time and didn't join Vistage till 8 years later. But he came in and he handed me a book that he wrote. And I was flipped through it, yeah, whatever, put it down. And we got to talking and he said, you should write a book. And I said, oh, what? He goes, it doesn't matter. Just write a book, write a business book, because if you write a business book and you walk into a client and you hand them the book, your credibility goes way up instantly because they think you must know something because you wrote a book about it. There was some logic to that. I got that. I could see that happening because I was impressed when this guy gave me his book. Sat down, staring at a blank screen. Nothing's coming to mind. I have no idea what I'm going to write about. And I heard a voice that I believe was God. I mean, it wasn't audible, but it was as close to audible as you get. And the voice, in the exact words, said, that's not the book you're supposed to be writing. You're supposed to write a book about Dylan. Mm-hmm. And I almost turned my head to see, like, who said that? But I had a very small office at my house. I was alone. Nobody said it. So I sat down and I started writing a book. And I ended up with a 260-page memoir about my experience as a father raising a son with autism, which is, you don't see. Go to the bookstore, go to the area about parenting, go to the area about special needs, whatever. You're going to find a bunch of books written by moms and a bunch of books written by professionals, some of who have never actually lived with somebody with autism. And I wrote a book thinking, I'll write this book. It'll be kind of cathartic, but I'm probably not going to do much with it because when I tell my son about it, he's going to say, you're not telling everybody all those things about me. Mm-hmm. And I decided about halfway through that if he wasn't on board, I wasn't going to do anything with it. I'd put it on a thumb drive, stick it in my top drawer. That'd be it. But at least it was done. I wrote what I felt I needed to write. I called him up and he was all excited about it. He said, yeah, I'm fine with it. I said, well, there's some pretty personal stuff in here. I want you to read it. And he said, yeah, I'm you sent it to me, but I'm good. And I said, all right, what I'd like to do is send you small bits at a time because he wouldn't read a whole book if I gave it to him. So I'll send you a chapter at a time. And if you have anything you want to add, write it and send it back to me. Those are throughout the book and they're called Dylan's Takes. And so it's Dylan's perspective of the story that I just told. I said to Dylan when I was telling him about the book, I said, who knows? We might be able to do some speaking about it. And he said, "Oh, I'd be great at that." And I laughed. I said, "Yeah, you probably would be." He's high functioning autism, so he's very verbal, very, 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 very verbal. Not much of a filter in most cases, and he's very charismatic and funny. He's hysterical. So we started looking into speaking engagements, and we've now done over 100 all around the country. We've been from Seattle to Texas to Florida, all over the Chicago, pretty much all over the country. Speaking at autism conferences. We've done a few workforce conferences because Dylan has an interesting experience in the workforce. He's had I think he's up to almost 50 jobs, and he'll be 30 this year. And he has been fired from almost every one of them. And almost every one of them he was fired for was because of his disability. However, he never could really claim that, because what he really got fired for was making a bad decision. And you can fire somebody for making a bad decision. You can't fire someone because they have a disability, but you can fire someone for making poor decisions. Could we have maybe sued some of them? Who knows, maybe, but that's not who we are. So he picked himself up and went and got another job. He's very good at getting jobs. So we've done some workforce conferences. Dylan does most of the talking at those. I talk a little bit about being the owner of a company. We have a couple people here on the autism spectrum. I talk a little bit about that, and then I pretty much let Dylan take it from there. And he's a rock star. He's unbelievable. He's as good a speaker as I've seen. And I watch a lot of podcasts and a lot of videos. Simon Sinek. Dylan is as good as any of them. He just needs the platform, which right now is impossible to get because of COVID. But he's really something special. When he gets up on that stage, he just comes alive. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and I miss it.
He wrote a book as well, right? He wrote a book himself.
Right. So after about 4 years of traveling around the country with what we call our book, he decided that he wanted to write a book about his life and his journey, a lot of things that I did not know about, so I couldn't write about in my book. His book starts, I think, somewhere around 5th or 6th grade, because he doesn't really remember a whole lot before that. He was just a little kid, and takes you up to my book, and then 4 years later. So, which includes several moves, several arrests, a meth addiction. There's a lot. I jokingly hand Dylan's book to people and I say, feel free to throw the Parent of the Year application away as you start to read this book. We did the best we could with what we had. We didn't know what we were doing. There was very little information when Dylan was diagnosed. Nobody knew much about what was then called Asperger's. Now they just call it high functioning autism. People just thought he was a pain in the ass. And it was some really tough years.
Yeah, and obviously we can talk a lot about some of these things, but are there any crystallized ideas that you have in terms of, as an entrepreneur trying to build a company, but you also have a responsibility of building a family, right? You have your spouse, your children, and having to balance both, right? Because most entrepreneurs would say they invest all their time building this company with the hope of helping their family, right? The ones that they really love, but often at the expense of not spending enough time with the family. So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are probably struggling with that dichotomy of trying to do both and not really doing really well in both areas?
Yeah, I've struggled with that. So I don't want the audience to think that I just always had everything under control, because that's not the case, I promise you. I have 4 kids. Of course, we had Dylan. That was a handful. I coached my 2 middle daughters in softball Little League, All-Stars, middle school. Softball was a big part of our life for a long time, which took us away for a lot of weekends. And then my daughter my youngest became a competitive cheerleader. So that took us all over the country with her cheering. And I'm still trying to run a business. So it's a challenge. You have to look at people. It's funny. People will say to me, I don't know how you have the time to do what you do. Mm-hmm. And it always struck me as odd because we all have the same amount of time. Like, I don't have any more time than anybody else. Everybody has the same exact 24 hours in a day. And it just comes down to how you prioritize those 24 hours. Mm-hmm. They say, look at someone's calendar and they can tell you what their priority is. Mm-hmm. So you look at my calendar and there's a bunch of business meetings and a bunch of softball games. So, because my daughter now plays college softball. If you look at my schedule for the next month, it's a mixture of business meetings and softball. So the one sentence in mind, and it's a cliche and probably an overused cliche, but it does have some truth to it. And that is, nobody on their deathbed ever said, I wish I spent more time at the office. Mm-hmm. Just doesn't happen. Now, that's not totally true, because I think there are some people that die and on their deathbed, they wish they could have grown their business more. They wish they could have been more successful. But the basic premise is, at the end, when it's all said and done, all that really matters is your kids and your legacy. That's it. You're gone. Poof. See ya. So what's left? And raising kids well, doing things for the community that impact the community, those writing a book about autism that will outlive me. I mean, I'll be dead and somebody will still be buying it off Amazon and checks will still come in. My book and Dylan's book both made the top 1% of Amazon. So we are considered Amazon bestsellers. Dylan's book has won a couple awards. So that's a legacy that will outlive me. Mm-hmm. I don't know about the company. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Who knows? It's way too early to make that call. In 2018, I built a hero's wall that's right outside my window here. That's 7 feet tall and 50 feet long, lit up, open 24 hours a day to honor veterans and active service members as well. They're tiles. They're 8.5 by 11 tiles. And right now there's about 450 on there. The wall will fit about 700 by the time it's done. And then I'll decide if I want to make the wall bigger. But that wall will outlive me. The people will come, hopefully, visit that wall long after I'm gone. That's a legacy. That's something that matters. So do what matters.
Most certainly. When I can talk to you, Derek, forever. There's a lot of insights, and we didn't even touch about your membership at the Association of the Manufacturing Association in Maine, and you've also been on the board of several Chamber of Commerce. You've done a lot in the community. So there's a lot of areas, and obviously there's a lot of lessons that we've collected here. Knowing what you know today, is there anything you would have done differently about how you've approached building this company?
Yeah, I mean, there's always things that, there's always, maybe a machine that didn't work out so well. But I can't think of something dramatic that I would have done differently, because whatever I did got me to where I am. Even the bad decisions I learned from. When COVID hit, I was actually at a Vistage meeting. For those people who don't know, Vistage is a CEO group run locally. So I think there's 12 of us in the group, but we're all in different businesses. And I'm like one of the oldest in the group. I think at one point I was the oldest. I think there's one guy older than me now. So I'm like the old fogey. There's like a bunch of them are young enough to be my kids. But I learned from them too. They have a totally different perspective on things. So I learned from them as well. But when COVID hit, we started talking about it at our Vistage meeting. And instead of talking what we were originally going to talk about, we decided to talk about how you get through a recession, because things were starting to shut down. Stores were starting to close. People were getting laid off like, unbelievable numbers after we had the best economy in the history of the world. And I think I was very helpful in that conversation because of the recessions that I'd been through already. And I could learn from the mistakes. Like one mistake that we made was in 2002, we were struggling. We did not tell our banker. We kept thinking we were going to pull out of it. And we didn't update our banker that we were struggling as much as we were until the year ended. And we showed him our financials. And he almost had a heart attack and said, "Why am I just finding out now that you're losing all this money every single month?" And we said, "Well, we thought we could turn it around, and we didn't want to bother you." I don't know what we told him, but he was pissed. He was not happy because now he has to go to his bosses and tell them that he's got a company that's flailing and hemorrhaging, and he didn't even know about it. Mm-hmm. And they're going to ask, how could you have a company that's hemorrhaging like this? Our debt to equity ratio was 26-1. Mm-hmm. So we were just in bad shape. And that was an important lesson. Keep your banker updated. Mm-hmm. If keep them updated on the good stuff, keep them updated on the bad stuff. There isn't a month goes by that I don't make sure that I at least call my banker once and say hello and let him know how we're doing. That was an important lesson. And when times get tough, having a good banker is really important. Also, a few years ago, I started squirreling away some cash every month. When COVID hit, the one thing you kept hearing when you'd read all these articles about how to get through this thing was cash is king. You gotta have cash, because if you can't have revenue, you gotta have something to keep the lights on. We had a nice cash reserve heading into COVID. Never had to touch it. In fact, we kept adding to it despite COVID. I think we took the April and May off of last year because they were such disasters. But as soon as June started to pick up, we started putting money back into the cash account, and we continue to grow it because we don't know what's coming down the road. There could be another recession in a year from now. We have no idea. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that we're strong enough to handle it, despite all the machinery that I keep buying.
Yeah, most certainly. Obviously, there's a lot of wisdom here. Any parting advice for our audience before we close? Be nice to your box supplier. He's doing a good job for you. Unless he's in New England, and then he's not. You should call us. Most certainly. Well, Derek, I really enjoyed our conversation. I wish you all the best with your business endeavor and also with the book. Thanks again for sharing this time with me. Thank you. And if anybody does want to get their hero on the wall, if anybody has someone that's served in the military, you don't have to be local. You can be from anywhere. Go to our website, volkboxes.com. Obviously, you can learn about the company, but you can apply for a heroes wall tile. We have scholarships, so if you can't afford it, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it, and we'll send you a proof, and we'll get the tile up, and you'll forever honor the person in your life that served, and that's available to anybody. So check that out, volkboxes.com. That's it. That's my last plug. All right, awesome. Well, Derek, I appreciate your time and look forward to staying in touch. Absolutely. Have a great day, and thanks a lot for having me on. Thank you.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by OneIMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.